Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Essence Podcast Into the Woods, in which I venture into the woods to meet with witches and spiritual practitioners and folkloric practitioners and dancers and all sorts of different people in the mists of the dark woods. And today I have Dr. Halo Quinn. Hello, Dr. Halo Quinn.
Hello, lovely to be
Hello.
here.
We've already talked for an hour, so I feel like this is just going to be a rolling conversation and people can catch up as we get back into it. But for those who don't know who Halo Quinn is, so Halo Quinn is actually someone from Wales, which is always fun when I get to chat to somebody from back home. Dr. Halo Quinn is a pagan, storyteller, author, philosopher, singer songwriter, and a lifelong lover of magic with a PhD in philosophy. She is the devotee of the Faery Queen and priestess of Freya and the Red Goddesses, a lover of the Welsh gods, and a sensual witch exploring the divine, erotic, and sacred nature of pleasure and beauty to re-enchant the world. Halo has taught for over a decade in the reclaiming tradition, is the founder of the magical collective for embodied sensual magic, the Crimson Coven, and the online magic school TEA, aka the Enchanted Academy. Her books include Gods and Goddesses of Wales, highly recommended, Fairies, Folktales, and Spirits. I haven't actually read that one, but it's on my list. And The Crimson Craft. Sexual
Oh,
magic for. I actually have a copy of it right here.
you have a copy. I love that book. It's so pretty.
It's got a lot to it. I mean, it's a small book. It's only what, like 159 pages, but it's got a lot in it. So we will talk about that and we will talk about your work. But for now, that is who Halo Quinn is. Welcome, Halo.
Well, hi Ben. It's lovely to be here to actually finally have a conversation with you. We've been chatting on Messenger for several months since you kind of reached out and said, "I'm coming back." So yeah, it's really nice to actually finally be in the space. And as you said, we managed
No,
to talk for about an hour
which is fun.
before.
And
Yeah,
we're
it's
not
been
going to
really
share what we talked about because that's our private conversation. You all don't have a right to that. So But no,
fun.
it's really good to have you on. Part of my interest with this podcast is to really connect with other authors and connect with other practitioners, particularly people back home as I start to make my move back there. So it is just thrilling, and your work was highly recommended by a mutual friend of ours, Mara. And then it turns out we have a load of connections because of Obot, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's something that I didn't keep in my bio because like loads of people are in OBOD. But yeah, I've actually recently, just this year, gotten onto the druid grade of OBOD. So yes, I am a druid of the druid grade in
A
the Order
druid
of
of
Bards. I made
druid
some
grade.
druids.
Very good, very good.
It sounds very fancy, doesn't it?
Well, perhaps we can start the conversation because you have all of these streams of traditions and practices, and you do speak about them in your work. So I'm curious, what is it like for you to dance in between so many traditions, and what's that like for you?
So for me, it feels less like I'm dancing between traditions and more like I'm sitting in the magic.
Mm,
So I grew up in actually the southeast of England. You can probably hear in my voice, my accent. And I moved to Wales back in 2005, and the land went, "You are home." But while I was growing up, I had an absolute obsession with fairies, and it was nurtured by my family, by my teachers. They all thought of it as kind of like a harmless, little girls like fairies kind of thing.
mm,
um but where it was coming from was this deeply held understanding that there were these spirits in the landscape and these beings that were like us but not like us, that were on that edge of that, in that liminal space, that were magic given form, given consciousness, or that had consciousness or something. And the closest thing I could find, the closest word I could find to describe it, was fairies. So I followed them. And this is why you might see in some of my bios in various places, I describe myself as pixie led. And it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because if you dive into the folklore of it, of course, being pixie-led is not necessarily a positive thing,
Mm,
but they seem to like me.
mm.
We seem to get on, and I treat them, and have always treated them, with respect, even right from when I was very little, and I was like climbing into bushes to try and find them, because I was sure I'm sure I've just no, okay. Um, so yeah, moving, but as you say, between traditions. I've done work, as I say, in OBOD. So I'm doing the study course in that, and I've run with one of my friends, another Ben, in fact. We ran an entire cycle of the OBOD open rituals for our local group, while we were working through the Bardic grade. And so operating that situation, working within reclaiming since I was 18, and was first able to go to my first witch camp a week after my birthday,
Yeah.
which was very exciting. And the story was Ceridwen. It
Oh, I
was this
love
story
that.
of
I love it.
Taliesin.
Mm,
Yeah. So there, and then down in Bristol, I've for about 5 years now, I've helped to run 4 years. I've helped to run a ceremonial magic based group, and course. We're on cycle 4, is just starting, so it's a training course over the course of a year. And obviously, in my teens, I looked at ceremonial magic, but kind of coming back into it from that space. And what I really find when I'm in whichever ritual or group it is I'm finding the connections, the
mm,
overlaps, where the things are the same, and how the different directions, the different approaches, and the I don't want to call it worldviews, because that sounds like it's just something that you can switch and change.
mm,
But yeah, but those different metaphysical models
mm,
and worlds that you enter into, where they slightly differ from each other, it gives a different flavor to how you approach the magic and how the magic moves in that space. And
mm,
so for
mhm.
me, it's fascinating and exciting and delightful and magical to find the overlaps, the connections, where they're the same, where they're different, and how to move through the magic in those different places, different ways.
I love that answer. I love that. A million questions, of course, millions of questions coming out of that. I guess something I heard in that is that the connection to the story and the connection to the overlaps, and
Mm.
sitting in that magic. So I'm curious then, you describe moving to Wales as coming home. I get that. I get that. I really do. I'm curious then how the story or how the overlaps shifted, changed the lens, like what lenses became different, if the lenses were different. How did moving to Wales affect you?
So, as I say, when I first entered into a reclaiming space, I'd already been training in Anderson Fairy, spelled
Mm,
Fei. I know you've got other people on
yes,
here that will have talked at length on there. So I'd already started training long distance with a fairy teacher, because being in the UK and being
not that many
17
over
at the
there.
time,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a little bit tricky to find. So I through that, and through looking at looking for the connections on there, I discovered that reclaiming, and that there was an event, and I went along, and the story was the birth of Taliesin, Historia Taliesin, Ceridwen, and it was such a powerfully moving experience. Now, I didn't actually go to university for another 2 years. I took 2 years out to study holistic therapies and to try and set up a massage business, which
Hmm.
did not work. I got one client, and she didn't come back because I was 19.
Oh no.
Um, Such is
It
life.
happens.
I
It happens, right?
Yeah. And I made up business cards and everything. I called it
Yeah.
Flutterby Therapies. Like, the butterfly has been something that has followed me forever.
Hmm.
And I was sort of 18 months out of college. I got really, really ill, like really, really ill, like some kind of gastric flu for it was only about a week or two. And I absolutely so much pain, couldn't do anything. It was grim. Um, And that month, my card for the month, that through the reclaiming work that I was doing, had been the death card.
Mm.
And I remember it so vividly. It was an animal based tarot deck, and it was a raven and it on a skull, and it was the death card. And I had that card in mind as I was lying on the bathroom floor, unable to move overnight, going, okay, I really need to look at my life and reflect on my life. What is it that I actually want to be doing? I was working in Virgin Megastores, which obviously doesn't exist anymore. I was, like trying to get this healing business off the ground and having no luck because I had no idea how to market anything.
Right, right.
Yeah. And I was sort of, yeah, led on the cold bathroom floor thinking about this death card, going, what is it that I really miss? What is it that I miss about what I did at college? What is it that really lights me up?
Mm.
And I remembered my philosophy classes where we'd be discussing things. This is quite a tangent from your question, I'm realizing.
It's okay. It's all good. We'll get back to it. It's okay.
Oh, we will. I will come back round to it because that's what we do. So it's that and I'm like, it's the philosophy. And so as soon as I was well enough to sit on the computer, and we finally had a computer, we hadn't had a computer for very long because my mum considered it to be um, the devil's
Mm.
work, even though she didn't believe in the devil. She brought me up. She was pagan, as well. She is pagan as well, kind of at
Mm.
heart.
Mm.
So we'd been brought up like trees are her religion. We had tarot cards in the house. It was sort of always in the background. Um, but anyway, so apparently but with all of that, the internet was the devil, the computers were the devil.
Mm.
So we finally had a computer, and I sat down on this computer and I looked for which universities did philosophy courses. And I pulled up 5 that looked like they might be interesting, like cities
Mm.
that I knew, including Bristol, which was just down the road that my best friend had gone to. And
Mm-hmm.
I was really excited about that one. And I found Lampeter,
Mm.
Llanber upon Steffan,
Right.
this little tiny, tiny town in the middle of nowhere. And for some reason, it sparkled at me. And this was in March. So in March, all of the official applications are in, and you're into the kind of clearing process. And so I was a couple of years out of college, and I actually phoned up the universities, and the only
Mm.
one that answered the phone was Lampeter.
Mm.
The only one that said, "Come, you've missed the open days, but come along anyway, and someone will show you
Nice.
around." Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'm already feeling pretty good about this place. And we got in my mum's little mini. She had a
Mm.
mini,
I love the
and it
minis.
was, yeah, and it was a little red mini with a white roof,
Yeah.
and it purred. So it
Mm.
was in this little tiny mini. And we went up to Lampeter in the April, and we got sort of down the motorway. So there's a major motorway that goes
Mm-hmm.
from where I lived across the south of England and into Wales, and you cross over this great big bridge. It's a huge suspension
Mm-hmm.
bridge, or huge for us anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes over this great river, and there's a toll booth on it that has finally gone. And
Yeah.
you go along the bottom of Wales through, and you go past Port Talbot, which looks like the fires of hell spewing out
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
big tall towers. It's this amazing industrial state that I would not want to go into, but you kind of look at it from a distance, and it's very cinematic. It looks like a scene from Blade Runner. And then we kind of finally got to the end of the motorway, and the road kept going and it kept going, and it got narrower and narrower and windier and windier. And we were going along the side of this really steep hill with this drop down and a river by the side of it, and the mists rose up.
I can imagine. It's like right next to the Brecon Beacons, isn't it? Down in that area. Was it
Lampeter
further on?
is it's so if you look at Wales, you've got kind of that blob on the side of the UK. I'm
Mm-hmm.
being general for our
The
international
Hogshead, yes.
listeners who may. So you've got that little bit, and in on the edge is probably the other side if you're looking at it on the camera. So it's like on the
Mm-hmm.
left hand side as you look at a map.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a curve in the middle,
Mm.
which is Cardigan Bay, which is
Mm-hmm.
the home of Cantor Gwaelod, the
Yes.
Lowland Hundred, the lost landscape. And if you go directly in from there to about the middle of the bit that is Wales,
Mm-hmm.
and a little tiny bit south, you get Lampeter.
Right.
So it's right in the
Right.
middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the big town of Aberystwyth, an hour's drive north, and the biggish town of Carmarthen, an hour's drive south. And then right in the, I know it doesn't sound like the
Zamperton.
middle of nowhere when you're used to driving for 4 hours, but it's a long, like, middle of nowhere place, surrounded by fields. It's in a valley.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so up this windy road that I now think of as a main road, but it seemed like the tiniest thing possible at the time, through the mist and the
Mm-hmm.
trees and the hills. And we came out into sunlight just before we got to Lampeter, into this valley. And I walked onto the campus, and the entire campus is in the middle of the town, and the town is basically
Yeah.
two streets.
Yeah.
And the light came through the beech leaves in that beautiful cathedral pattern that you get, like you look up through beech leaves and it's like light through
Mm-hmm.
stained glass windows, but in a lime green that just sings of
Mm-hmm.
spring. And the I just I was walking there and I could almost feel the presence of Ceridwen in the land. And I didn't know the other Welsh stories at that point,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Yeah.
knew that one. And I could almost hear Taliesin, like, singing just in the distance. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not leaving this place. This is my
Yeah.
home. I've never felt
Yeah.
more at home anywhere.
That makes sense. You looked at the place and you were like, I'm going to spend thousands of pounds at this place. I know it.
Yes, yes. And I was
Right?
lucky. I got in just at the end of the loans before the top up fees came in.
Oh, good, good,
So
good, good.
yeah, but I still owe 25,000, 30,000 pounds, whatever it is, on student loans.
Mm,
Don't we all? And yeah, so coming into that space, and then of course you meet all the other students. I was a couple of years older than them, but it didn't matter. I was there to learn. I was there to study philosophy. I was there to debate things. We had the tiniest of classes because it's the tiniest of places.
yeah.
So our normal classes were about seminar size, with like 10 people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was brilliant. So you get to know everyone. And down the back of the university is like a whole bunch of trees, and it's actually, there's a kind of a gravel dumping ground, like building dumping ground at
Mm,
one end, but it's a little valley that runs alongside what used to be a railway line,
mm.
and it's sheltered and hidden. And in back in the 90s, the pagan society built a stone circle out of bricks with
Wow.
an altar stone and a fire pit, and so we'd run rituals down there. And every time I walked down there, I could feel that those spirits that I felt when I was looking for fairies and burrowing into those hedges, those hollow hedges, and being sort of surrounded by the green and the spirits and the
Mm,
song of the magic. Like, I'd find it in those tiny little pockets back in the town that
yeah.
I grew up in. But everywhere I walked in Lampeter, everywhere I went in Wales, had that energy to it. It was like
Mm,
the land was alive with spirits and with
yeah.
stories. And the culture itself, I mean, the culture in Wales itself
It's
is just,
beautiful, isn't it?
oh,
Yeah,
it's just drenched in stories
it is.
and magic.
That's the thing.
So yes, I don't know if that answered your
Mm.
question, but
No,
there's
I'm
how I
getting
ended up
major
here.
hair life right now, so it's just. I, I,
Yeah.
I I find it interesting though, because and I wanna ask you, I wanna probe more. I'm Oprah
Mm,
right now. I wanna probe
please, please,
more.
please.
Having studied philosophy myself, just a few, I mean, the 10 courses I've studied, it can be such a weird kind of sense because you really do enter into a different world when you're working with these texts, when you're working with these ideas, when you're so heavily invested in it. What I found is that I started to see these ideas manifested in the natural world around me, right? When I was reading Plotinus, I could see Plotinus's arguments in the relationships with the natural world around me. And it's a weird thing. Did you find that studying philosophy in that kind of very monastic space, I mean, those little tiny towns
Yes.
and those little universities feel like those old monasteries back in the day, right? Did it feel like you were just in a bubble?
A little bit. So,
Mhm.
interestingly, like Lampeter is actually, it was founded as a theological
Ah,
college.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's got that vibe. It's got the old buildings. It was the first brick was laid in 1822. So, you
Mm.
know, it was like the foundations were put down then. So it dates back to the early 1800s. Um, and you've got that real sense of history and that safe space because it's in a valley, it's all self contained, and it's surrounded by nature. So I really felt like I was held in this space where I was safe to explore and to be confronted by and to be in class with other people, like arguing and debating over these ideas and sharing them. And one of my tutors, one of my lecturers, who actually was the person who showed me around,
Mm.
on that the open day that wasn't an open day, he was an absolutely batty, wonderful American, and the classic idea of an eccentric lecturer, like
Right.
an eccentric philosopher. Yeah, wild hair, and so he actually taught us the ancient Greek philosophy module. And
Mm.
he took us through. So one of the aspects of it, one of the pieces we touched on, was Pythagoras and reincarnation.
Mhm.
And his thing was, okay, each lesson, each lecture, he'd give us about a dozen different essay titles that we could do if we wanted to. So rather than having a list of 10 to choose from, he'd sort of just reel them off based on the topics. He's like, you could talk about this, you could talk about this, you could write about this, as long as it's this long to meet the criteria, or write on a topic of your choosing. And we got to this thing about Pythagoras and reincarnation, and he said, there's a hypnotherapist that does past life regression. If you want to, go and actually experience it and then write it
Oh.
up in the context
Oh, I
of
love that.
Pythagoras.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that so much. Wow.
So we were exploring some of these in those sorts of classes. We were exploring these kind of really, like, how do we bring those real
Mm.
experiences of magic into those spaces. For one of my essays for one of his classes, I actually, and I forget which philosopher it is, that his entire philosophy is a conversation with the goddess of wisdom.
Mm.
So I said, well, if he can have a conversation with the goddess of wisdom, then I can have a conversation with the goddess as well. So
Mm.
I wrote a series of letters to, the star goddess from the fairy tradition, like the ground of being, series of short letters to her, and then I channeled
Mm.
responses. And I did it like 3 or 4 of these. And then I wrote up the philosophy around them and the
Nice.
arguments around them and how it fit in with the. So that was like one side of it. And then on the other side of it, some of our classes were deeply intensely, you had to back up, as you should do, like back
Mhm.
up absolutely everything with really rigorous logic. And the classes themselves, you'd sort of take it in turns to give a presentation on a topic, and then you'd debate it and pick it apart. And so in those classes, I was having to argue for or against all sorts of different things. And so that then melded with the, okay, you can have these intense magical experiences, and then how do you talk about them logically? And
Right.
so I've got on my blog some of my oldest posts about my belief in and my work with fairies, with the Fae, with the
Mm.
spirit world, and the philosophy. And I'm like, okay, like philosophically, you can argue
Mm.
that they exist one way, or you can argue that they don't exist another way.
Mm.
And here is why it is logical to believe in the so-called irrational.
Mhm.
And actually, the response I got to that post from someone was, sorry, I really loved your book, but are you saying, like, my first book, Your Fairy Magic, like, I really loved your book, but you're talking about this, and now are you saying you don't actually believe in them and that you were like you were lying to me? I'm like,
Right.
no, I'm just saying that there are so many perspectives out there and so many ways of exploring these things, and you have to square it for yourself, what
Totally.
it means to you, how you approach these beings, where you come to them.
Mm.
And it's why I always start all of my magical teachings with a thing of, okay, this is about being in relationship with yourself and with the
Huge.
magic, with the beings. And so the starting point is that you make space for it.
Mm.
And you do that with respect, because
Yes.
whatever it is, however you see it, that respect is foundational to any kind of interaction and relationship.
Mm-hmm. Very
Even
much
if you're
so.
then going to argue that maybe they don't really exist.
But I mean, that respect piece is, as a foundation stone, is foundational to relationship, right? Even if you do argue that they don't exist. Yeah. Did you find what you were looking for in those years, do you think?
I did.
Mm,
I came back to philosophy after having those couple of years away from it, and I loved it so much. All of the different sides of it, even when it was hard, even when it was challenging, even when there were arguments that made me go, oh, do I need to question my deeply held spiritual beliefs? I'm like, okay, it's good to question them.
very much so.
It's good to ask those questions and to square with yourself where you sit with it. Um,
Mm,
I mean, I continued on then for another. I did a 4-year philosophy degree with a 25,000 word dissertation at the end of it, and then I went on to
mm.
do a PhD. So, um, you know, and I somehow managed to make my PhD, although that's not the title, but it's in the philosophy of enchantment.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's the beauty though of that educational path, right? Is to go deeper and deeper and deeper, right? That's what I mean. Me mansplaining to you, you know this, right?
You're not
Yeah,
mansplaining, we're having a conversation. It's all right.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting though how many people are hesitant to ask the question because oftentimes the question is being asked by people who share a different set of logical assumptions, I should say, often Judeo-Christian, right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Like that's something that's fascinated me as soon as we started getting into the philosophy of religion when I was like 16, 17 at college. And they were going, okay, so problem of evil, if God is all good and all powerful and all present and whatever the other one is, all knowing, then why does evil exist? And I'm
Mm.
like, well, that's not a problem if you have multiple gods.
This is the thing, right? This is the thing.
Yeah, you're starting out with if God is, and I'm like, well, what if God is not?
This is the thing,
That's not a
right?
problem for me. Yeah.
I always love reading Augustine and seeing how he squirms around all of these pieces and is like, please, honey. Yeah, I have a soft spot for Augustine. I think he's very cute myself, you know.
Yeah. And it's that thing of we all come into these things with our beliefs and our foundational things, and we're all
Mm,
however deep we go into
mm,
questions, we're all trying to back up our position. And that's what we want to find. We're not looking to disprove the existence of our gods or the Fae or the whoever, the
very much
spirits, the
so.
ancestors. We're looking to somehow find some way of expressing to others, look, they are real. I know they're real. I just need to find the way of explaining to you that they're real so that you'll join me, and then we can know they're real together. And actually you can't. It doesn't work like that.
No, no. It speaks more to that idea of experience, and everybody will experience things differently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Particularly when you've got different brains as well. That's
very
always
much so.
something I discovered halfway through my PhD, where I was talking about the experience of art and the experience of storytelling. So
Mm,
rather than the narrative itself, the experience of the activity. And I was like, well, the experience is like this, and I describe it from my experience.
mm,
And then I was diagnosed with ADHD and probable autism halfway through my PhD, and went, oh, yeah, but what if that means that I don't experience it like the majority of like 70% of human beings? Like, or
mm-hmm,
90% depending on
mm-hmm.
which rubric you're working on. Like maybe my experience genuinely is different because my brain is wired differently.
Yeah,
Huh, what does that do to my philosophical position?
this is the thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that has come into recent focus in the community a lot. I see a lot more people talking about the issue of visualization, the issue of what so many of the meditations, so many of the exercises, so many of the corpus of material that we have in many traditions is do visualizations, do meditations, this and that dawning realization in the community that not everybody is able to visualize in the same way. And that's throwing, I think, a lot of people off, but it's also liberating a lot of people, I'm seeing.
Yeah. Well, so here's a story.
Okay.
My biggest frustration is personal story. My biggest frustration growing up and knowing that there were these spirit beings there, and the word that I gave them was fairy, because that was the closest word I could find. I'm like, I know that they're there. I know that they're communicating with me. I can hear them. I can feel them. But everyone says you should be able to see them. Why can't I see them? And I thought they
Right.
meant with my physical eyes, like literally
Mm,
see them. And then I was like, oh, okay. And it took literal years to realize that the seeing of them was metaphorical. It's
mm-hmm,
not about sight, it's about experience. At
mm-hmm.
which point I started to relax, and I could then let my um tactile, kinesthetic, auditory, knowing, and those sorts of experiences, I could then let my brain translate it into images if I felt the
Very much
need
so.
to. But I didn't have to. I could just be with them as they were turning up for me.
Yeah.
And then when I was about 21, I woke up to find actual literal visuals of them standing over the bed going, hello, do you want to come with us? I'm like, I've got work to do here.
Yes.
No, please
But
stay.
that's the thing with fairy. That's the thing with some of these beings. At least this might be my experience. As
Yeah.
soon as you peg them down, they shift and they transform. They are Ceridwen and Taliesin chasing each other, right? They're, oh, you think you know us? Well, you know. That's
Yeah.
at least how I've experienced them.
Yeah, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
In my first book through Moon Books, Your Fairy Magic, I've got a little interlude in there called, anatomy of a fairy, and it's something along the lines. I'm paraphrasing, but it's something along the lines of fairies have wings, except when they don't.
Right.
Fairies have tails, except when they don't. And they have hooves, except when they don't. And they look like us, except when they don't. And it's like the and so I sort of like use that kind of process of going, well, here are all the different ways in which these beings have been described. And part of that is because we're actually describing a lot of different beings under that banner. I have experienced a lot of different beings that kind of fit within that range of frequencies, that
Yeah.
range of experiences, and they appear in lots of different ways. And Brian Froud's
Oh, I
work
was just
is
thinking of him. I was just
yes,
thinking of him. Yeah.
absolutely. And I love the fact that Brian and Wendy Froud actually genuinely have like relationship where you can see it in their artwork, in the art
Yeah.
that they make.
Yeah.
Um, and it's that like they both the spirits themselves look different and appear differently and have different qualities and different ways of interacting, and some of them are kind and some of them are not, and some of them want to work with us and some of them really don't. And I'm like, yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely fine. um and it's also that they're not pinned down to a physical experience in the same way that we are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, arguably we shapeshift over time.
Completely.
Yeah. And I know people who are amazing actors, and they act like in there. And I'm thinking of one person in particular who is actually dreadfully, like chronically ill, and has this amazing ability to put on a mask that everything is fine. She moves like it's fine. She smiles like it's fine. She's just sort of beaming with beauty, and everything is perfect and all is well. And because I know her, I know when she's wearing that mask, and I'll know to either to leave it alone or to just go,
See the
yeah, but
edges. Yeah.
yeah, are you sure you're okay? At which point, like sometimes there'll be a bit of a crack and go, actually, no, can I have a hug? Or um,
Yeah.
no, but I need to keep going. It's like, okay, that's fair enough. But the difference between the everything's fine public face and the her I'm relaxed and actually just being myself, or when she's being incognito, her
Mm.
face literally looks different. Like that is a human that is shape shifting in real
Mm-hmm.
time. And
Yeah.
we all do it to a degree as well.
Oh, we do. Every single one of my clients, I'm very eager to point that out to them when we get to that point. The coping mechanism, it's
Mm.
evolutionary. It's how we survive in the world. It's funny because I've been doing a lot of soul searching around the concept of weird as opposed to fate and the idea of
Yeah.
in relationship. I love it. I know I absolutely love it. But it is
The,
that sense of finding then that center. And that's really what like modern psychotherapy is, what any kind of spiritual path is now. I know that Anderson Fairy tradition is and reclaiming is very much about coming to that center place. And it's understanding then that there is an essence that can manifest as it needs to. That's been my experience with spirits as well, right? There's this
yeah.
sense of they flow and they become what they need to be or what they want to be, depending on the situation, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
And there's that absolutely that thing. So within fairy, there's that piece of what is the work of this god. If
Mm-hmm.
I am a divine being, I am divine and animal and human and all of those things. And so if I am in alignment and I am a divine being in this world, what is my work in this world? And
Mm.
sometimes the way in which we offer up our work, it will be different depending on the context.
Very
That
much
doesn't
so.
change the core of it, but it changes the way in which we relate with those specific people, those specific situations.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes up for me. So a lot of my public facing work at the moment. So obviously I've got the kind of four strands of well, three main strands of the storytelling and the performance, the fairy work, but then there's the piece that I'm currently putting a lot of focus in because it's so necessary in this world, is the embodied magic, the crimson craft, the red witchcraft stuff. That's the one.
Right here.
um,
Yes.
right there. And I think maybe I shot myself in the foot a little bit by describing it as sexual magic, but actually it's in terms of marketing, because some people go, oh, I'm not sure, but actually what it's about is that remembering that we are embodied beings. And when you
Very much
take
so.
divine love, like the love energy that flows through all things, that energy of coming together, of expressing, of you know, however you want to describe it, you embody that
Yeah.
comes into the body and feels like eros. It feels like sexual energy when we
Very
allow
much
it
so.
to flow. And so cutting ourselves off from our bodies and our sexual energy, not talking about intercourse, not talking about genitalia, but that energy of life force, of
Yes.
eros. And here's where we're getting into the Iron Pentacle from the fairy and reclaiming traditions. It's sex is life force. It's that
Mm.
energy of eros that is love in the body. So
Yes.
many of us have had bad experiences with that, have had things that have cut us off from that, and have so much healing to do around it.
Mm.
Um, but we have this perceived split between our bodies and our spirits. We have this perceived like split between eros and life force and magic. And actually, you weave those things back
Mm.
together, and suddenly you root down into the body. And that actually, if I'm honest, that embodied magic runs through everything that all of the things that I've written about, all of the things I've worked with,
Mm.
from the storytelling through to the working with the Welsh gods, through to working with the fairy folk, journeying, the ceremonial magic. I've brought in somatic components to that to root the high
Mm.
intellectual like things into how do we root this into the body, because it's so important.
It's
And
huge.
so
It's huge.
my public, yeah, and so my public facing stuff is very much talking about that, finding those threads of pleasure that rise up when we are in touch with that life force, that eros, and which can feel erotic in a sexual way, or it can feel erotic in a I'm alive
Yes.
way.
Yeah.
And yeah, and all of those pieces, but a lot more privately can be actually more in relationship to the fact that we are mortal and are limited and
Mm-hmm.
are going to die. And that kind of rooting in with the dead and the spirits of
Mm.
the dead. And so and that I keep quite private, not
Mm,
because it's wrong or not connected or anything like that, but because that's the deeper level that is my work that isn't at this point in time supposed to be out, like what I'm putting out into the world. And I'm just noticing this shift at this point where I'm like, actually, I'm kind of being called to
mm,
mention it a little bit more and go, well, there is this thread. Eros and Thanatos are two parts of the same coin,
very much so.
life and death. Yeah,
It's that cosmic continual cycle. Every moment is a moment of life and death. Every moment is a moment of embodiment and dissolution and re-embodiment over and over and over again, right?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And
It's
that's that. Yeah,
oh, sorry,
carry
go
on.
on.
Oh, I want to hear what you were going to say.
Well, it's really landing for me because I found myself in a situation recently where I posted something on my private Instagram account, and I was shamed for it by my family members I don't have particularly close, and I don't allow to be particularly close. But it was an interesting moment of, okay, interesting what's happening here. Because I feel like as we move into that type of work, it can become very threatening for other people, and
Oh, yeah.
especially around that sexuality, which isn't sexuality. It isn't the intercourse piece. It is the embodiment of who we are, and the exaltation of who we are. So basically, what happened is I posted a picture of myself in a puppy mask and a harness on my private on my private Instagram account. And I got a message from my sister, who I don't allow to be very close to me, stating that she thought it was disgusting, that it was inappropriate. How can you, as a counsellor, have that? All of these things. I told her in not so many words that she can take that criticism and write it down on a piece of paper and go away with it. But it was funny that when I've seen it with other clients, I've seen it. I mean, it's a general part of our culture that the control suddenly comes in, the need to control what other people do with their bodies,
Mm.
because that's a threat. And it's fascinating. We were talking before about the place of the witch is the embodiment of the other, and that place of that connection of death and sex and life and magic all connected, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So before I wrote the Crimson Craft, I actually had a book of it's poetry and prose, called Twisted, and
Mm.
I put it out under a slightly different name because I was trying to keep things separate. At this point, I'm like, well,
Why not?
what happens happens. Yeah, and part of that was because as a storyteller, I often get bracketed in with the children, and
Mm.
so having like for me, I'm like, well, your parents clearly had sex, so there's like that's how you exist. I'm not going to bring that into your space. I know, like that's not, ew, no.
Mm.
Um, so they're separate things, but for other people there's this weird thing about the taboo about what is the, and this is one of the reasons I use the word witch for myself. I've thought about it a lot because historically and in many parts of the world, the word witch is specifically for people who do malefica. It's
Mm.
specifically that negative connotation. And
Yes.
over the past 50, 70 years, we've kind of attempted to reclaim it, to claim it from that space. It's not a reclamation, it is a claiming.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm there going, okay, well, knowing what I know about the history, knowing what I know about the world, do I still want to use that term for myself? And the answer is yes, because it doesn't matter if I was the to use the common parlance, like the whitest witch ever. Sigh. Let's leave aside how
Everybody
many
listening
witches
to
there
this is
are.
a folkloric witch. They are totally on board with it, so they understand
Oh
what you
yeah,
mean.
oh yeah. I know that but I'm just like, yeah. I know I know, right? But even if I was the most good, kind, sweetest magical practitioner ever and only ever did things to help, I'm still doing magic. I'm
This is
still
fascinating.
exploring the spirit world. I'm still talking about sexuality as important to life, about embodiment
Mm-hmm.
as a source of power. I'm still talking about ways in which we can pull our power back from the overculture. I'm still talking about kink and
Mm-hmm.
about these taboo practices that help us explore shifts in consciousness if that's an area that works for you. And for me, the overlap between the kink world and the magical world is it's so obvious as to be a no-brainer.
Totally.
You know, the scenes and rituals, the dom in a scene, if you've got that kind of setup, and the ritual leader, the ritualist, hold it, the way you hold that space and hold those different layers of consciousness
Yes.
is the same. The
Totally.
techniques of pushing yourself through the different layers of consciousness, even some of the literal techniques that we use, sensory deprivation,
Mm-hmm.
extremes of endurance, extremes of sensation or unusual sensations, facing of taboos, like those things, they happen in both situations. And both situations raise energy. So it doesn't matter if I'm only ever practicing things for a positive reason, which, generally speaking, is the case. I am very much a, like, let's be nice to each other kind of
Mm-hmm.
person. I'm a healer at heart.
Mm.
Even if that's true, the rest of the world will look at what I'm doing and go, you are weird
Yeah.
and icky somehow. Ooh. So I'm like, okay, fine, if that's what you think. If that's how the world is going to respond, I may as well embrace that
Yeah.
and be part of that claiming of the word and go, you know what? Yeah, these things that you think are dark are
Mm.
healing too.
It's so interesting. Earlier I just had written a slide on the transformation of the word weird from WYRD. Oh, okay, there we go. Lost
I'm
you for
still
a
here.
second. I was saying it was so interesting. I just written a slide about the change from WYRD, particularly from Shakespeare in Macbeth, the Weird Sisters, the Wayward Sisters, and how that
Yes.
word weird became just unusual and different, and as opposed to what it actually connected to, which was that unfolding of fate. And so I wonder if I can challenge that for you. If I can say that maybe it isn't well, in one way, anyways, in the one particular way I'm looking at it, that reclamation of the word weird and connected to witch as not being witches as strange, but witches as being embodiment of the unfolding of destiny. I wonder.
I love that connection. And so if my internet's being a bit glitchy, so I might switch over to my mobile thing when it comes on. So if there's a moment, that's what I'm
Of
doing.
course.
Um, so I really, really love that. I use the word weird, and me and my friends have a thing of like, well, we're weird, pick your spelling.
Right.
Because it is, yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. And I've got quite a connection, quite a history with kind of the Norse pagan, Nordic pagan stuff. So paganism from that kind of heathen perspective. I wouldn't say I was a heathen, but I've run in heathen circles. Um, Again, it's that dancing between traditions because the spirits and the magic, that's where it moves me.
Right.
Um, and so the when we got into the philosophy of fate and justice and things like that, and predeterminism, sorry, determinism and
Versus
free will, that was
indeterminism.
the
Yes.
thing. Yeah. So it was that kind of question of like, do we have free will? Do we get to choose everything, or is everything laid out? Whether that's cause and effect or a divine plan. And I just kept coming back to the Nordic notion of I say Nordic, the heathen notion of weird as fate that is everything is woven in a tapestry and the tapestry is still weaving. And we are a thread in that tapestry. And we are within the tapestry. We are the like the color of our thread is the color that it is, but we can sort of shift it. We can add a little bit of dye to shift it up so far. And we can also, weave off of the pattern that we're already on. we can only go so far, but we can go so far. And some people have bigger, thicker threads and they make a bigger mark in the overall pattern. And some people have tiny threads and they go off on huge tangents and that makes a big effect. So it's that kind of weird, like fate as not set, but also
Mm.
not entirely like free form
Yeah.
that I really love. So yeah, just to kind of come
Absolutely.
back
No,
to your thing, yes,
absolutely.
the witch as the unfolder of weird, and it's one of the reasons that I love the word that I took it up originally, was that
Mm.
thing about the connections with the magic, the connections with the darkness, with
Yes.
the materia magical, with the sabbat, with the I said yeah the sabbat grounds, the ecstatic side of things, the riding on broomsticks and going fuck you, I don't care what you think of
Yeah,
me,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
but also that the how closely linked that was towards the empowerment of marginalized individuals, um, obviously, and how often it was someone on the edge offering up those skills in ways that are supportive, not just being an outcast, but still being a part of and a necessary part of that ecosystem, as it were. Yeah, so being
Yeah.
a part of that.
That's such a really important linkage with, I think, all of our colleagues that have been on my show so far. Every single one of them have made that point. So if listeners haven't quite gotten that point yet, you need to catch up. But it's that sense of responsibility. But coming back to that sense of logic, then that idea that the spirit world is not in the same realm of logic that we often exist within, right? That idea that we place and we try to control that sense of the experience. Going back to your experience with envisioning fairies, like, why can't I see them? Oh, right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, there's also this piece, and I love the description of humans as rationalizing animals.
Mm,
We're storytelling animals. We rationalize things. It's not that we are rational to start with. It's we have experiences and then we fit them into the story and into the narrative, and we apply the logic that we have to them. And what that means is that we often filter out a lot of experience and a lot of spirit contact, a lot of information by necessity. This is good. This is
yes.
absolutely a good thing. We need to filter out a lot of that and to work on our skills to be able to let it in when we choose and not the rest of the time. I mean, the number of people who said, "Oh, did you like? Can you see this, that, and the other happening around me?" And I'm like, "Well, no, I wasn't looking."
Mm,
And they give me a funny look, and I'm like, "Well, no, I'm already overwhelmed by most of the physical world, let alone, I'm not actually overwhelmed by it most of the time because I do manage myself. But, I'm easily overwhelmed and distracted and excited. I get excited about everything. Um, and that's distracting. So if I was to open up and let any old thing in, that's not going to help anyone.
no, no.
But yes, so it's that thing about the spirit world having different logic to ours. Well, of course it does. The world has different logic to the
Totally.
logic we think it does.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. I think that people coming into these traditions, they bring with them certain expectations of what they think this will be like. But really, those expectations are based on those other paradigms, not even bases of logic, other paradigms.
Mm.
And I think at least what I hear is that it can be often very liberating by just being in a different paradigm for so many people. Have you found
Yeah.
that with your work?
Yeah, one of the things that I love and I really love, because my obviously my with my background in reclaiming, I'm very much used to ecstatic, co-created, participatory
Yeah.
ritual. And I love that. My early experiences of group ritual was going, because I grew up near Avebury, so I'd go down to Avebury on the festivals. Oops. See, distracted by my world. Um, I'd go to Avebury over the festivals, and there'd be groups of druids doing during druidry. druidy rituals there, and sometimes there were some really good groups, and then other times there was King Arthur and his lot, and their thing was at the start, let's do this quick so we can go to the pub, and
Yeah.
then 15-minute ritual, and then it'd be to the pub, and everyone would cheer, and they'd all go to the pub and start drinking, and I'm like, well, that's not what I'm here for.
Hmm.
And so when I sort of got into reclaiming, discovered that way of working with things that brought the experiences I was having solo and in the small groups of friends that I'd started out exploring with, they all drifted off because they,
Hmm.
had lives. Like, magic's my thing, it's fine, I don't expect it to be everyone's.
And you
um
also have a life that
yeah.
you were leading too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, that was my life. I'm like, this is where I want to be.
Mm.
Absolutely. I When I got to secondary school, um, it was the like in my second year of secondary school, so I'd have been 11. Um, the the people that I'd started doing, like, discovering magic with, uh, they'd been messing around with Ouija boards and freaked themselves out, and so I found out about it and went, oh well, I'm going to go to the library then and see if I can look up ghosts and find out what's going on. Books have always been magic to me. And so I went to the library, and on the shelf next to the huge old Bible, and then the new annotated Bible, and there were actually a couple of books on the paranormal, and a little book of the Usborne Book of Ghosts, and the Usborne Book of Witches. And I went, oh, ghosts, that's what I was looking for. Hang on a minute, there are witches.
Mm.
And they had a book called The Psychic Explorer.
Oh yes, I remember that book.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was did you encounter the big hardback one which had the ceremonial magic rituals in the back, or the little one that was just
Little
the
one.
first 6 chapters?
It's
Yeah,
just the first picture. Yeah.
yeah. So I found it was the big book, and I
Hmm.
I finally have a copy of it.
I'll be
It took
honest.
me years.
I encountered it when I was way too young to really understand what it was about. So but I remember it.
So this is the book. This is the
Yeah.
book that started my journey into
Mm.
magic. And the first, I think it's 7 chapters. No, it's 8 chapters. So the first 7 chapters are like astrology and auras and the tarot and dowsing, palmistry, ESP, and aromatic, so incense and essential
Mm.
oils. And then the final chapter is ceremonial magic, and it's how to prepare and cast 7 safe traditional magic spells. So it's seven rituals based around the planets.
Mm.
So tender age of 11, I got this
Mm.
out. I did all of the exercises in it,
Of
all of the
course.
rituals in it. I was very excited. It was amazing. I took it back to the library, and I considered keeping it and just telling them I'd lost it, but I didn't. I took it back. I put it back, and then the next week I thought, you know what, I'm going to get that out, and I'm going to tell them I've lost it. And I went back to get it out, and it had gone, and it
Oh
never turned up again.
no.
And I looked for it, and I found the little copy in like the
Mm.
works and all sorts of places, but I found this finally about 7 years ago in Glastonbury for
Love it.
£4, I think it was. Yeah. And I'm like, right, that's it. It's never
That's
like,
it.
that's not
Yours. It's yours. Yeah. Mildred Hubble's not getting this one.
exactly. It's like someone, and I think the librarian must have seen it, and when I took it back and
Oh
gone, hang on a minute,
yeah.
why have we got this in the library? But anyway, so when my so-called friends, they'd moved from another school, and they turned up, and they started getting bullied for practicing magic, for being, I mean, I'd been bullied for being a witch since I was like, oh, this is
Yeah.
what I do. Like, I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and I wasn't going to, so everyone was like, oh, and they started getting bullied for it. So they said to me, they took me aside, and they said to me, look, we're going to keep practicing, but we're telling everyone else we've stopped. If you want to stay friends with us, you have to tell everyone else you've stopped as well. Because otherwise, if we stay friends with you, they'll know that and you're telling it, like, they'll know that we haven't really stopped. And I was like, well, I'm not going to lie about it.
Yeah.
This is why people think I might be autistic. I'm like, why would I lie about it? This is what I'm doing. Like, if they don't like it, they can go and do something else. Go and
Mm.
play football, or do makeup, or whatever it
Or
is
play
that they're doing.
Pokemon or whatever boring stuff, right?
Yeah, I don't even know if Pokemon was out at that point. whatever it was, some kind of, yeah. It must have been. It must have been. I don't remember. I wasn't interested. I was learning about spirits, you know, and the planets and all of these like amazing things. And so they decided they weren't going to be friends with me. And they told me they were absolutely going to keep practicing and doing things at home when no one else could see them. They were sisters,
Mm,
so that, like, they had each other to practice with, but
right.
they just refused to be involved with me because they didn't want people
Mm,
to know. And I understand, as an adult, I'm like, I understand why you would like want to keep that hidden,
mm,
because it is taboo and people do think you're weird because you
yeah,
are weird. But that's not a problem. That's
this
their
is the thing.
loss.
This is the thing. People could be very. It's I don't. It's weird now because it's so prevalent. Everybody and their cousin is a witch, and there's
Yeah.
so many things in. Well, this is the thing, right? It's like witch, right? But
Yeah.
it's so prevalent in the culture, and it's so prevalent in the queer culture. The number of
Yeah.
queer folk who, especially the teenagers, like if you're not a polyamorous, autistic, witch, queer, transgender, non-binary, you know, harpist, then you're not one of us, right? There's a whole constellation of things that have
I
come
love that you've
together.
just described one of my friends. No more than one of my friends.
I
But there
could
we
have
go.
said Potter. I could have said Potter.
That would have been two different friends. Yeah, yeah.
Right? But
But
it
yeah,
is
I mean, it's true.
interesting. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, no, no. I'm agreeing with you. Like, it's very
Mm,
true. And this is the thing. Like, the term witch, or the idea of magic, has multiple different layers and expressions.
mm,
And we've gotten to a point where it's a cultural phenomenon,
mm,
that, like, people are using the term witch to fit that kind of queer pagan. Like, they're religiously pagan,
mhm,
and they're like outside of the norm, or they're Wiccan.
yeah.
They could actually be very, very straight pagan, but they use the term witch because it's that nature based connection.
Mm,
Or they're a woman in total control of herself. Like,
oh,
it's a feminist political thing, or it's an
mhm,
art thing, or it's a whatever. And I love and am discomforted at the same time, but I love the way in which people are exploring this term and making it their own. And it is so much epitomizes what magic is, that it expands to be
mm,
more than just like the
completely.
serious practice. It encompasses and welcomes in. And so we've
Mhm,
got all these different layers, and you've got so many people who
mm.
are doing things on, like, it's a cliche, but like the TikTok witch. And we've got
Oh,
some very,
we
very,
don't
very
speak
good
of that here.
TikTokers. No, we don't. We don't. We've got some wonderful people
Yes, we
who
do.
do their work on TikTok, and that's, like, I I am getting apparently old because it's the newest form of social media, and or it's not even the newest anymore. But it's like that was a step too far for me. I can't manage it. Mostly because I fall down a rabbit hole with it.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, I can't. That's gonna just
It's
suck all my
overwhelming.
energy.
It's
Yeah,
overwhelming. I find it overwhelming. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but so we've got so many people who are kind of and this is one of the issues that I've found, for the 25 years that I've been practicing,
Mm,
longer now, is that we have this thing within paganism, within magical circles, that anyone can be a witch, and anyone can be a priest or a priestess, and anyone can be, and I'm like, you absolutely can. Anyone can pick up those terms and take them on and start there and do their practice.
mm,
Absolutely. Please do.
mm,
Do pick up the magic. Do your, like, whatever your practice is. And if this is howling at the moon once a
mm,
month, or celebrating the solstice once a year,
mm,
or blowing a kiss to the sun at dawn every day, like, as little or as extensive as it might be, all of it is valid and welcome and needed in this
mhm,
world.
mhm,
And and just because you are a magical practitioner doesn't mean that you also have the skills to facilitate a group ritual. That's a set
Very
of
much
skills that
so.
need learning. Just
Yeah.
because you are a witch doesn't mean you have the skills to teach what you do.
Hmm.
You need to learn those skills. And please, by all means, go and learn those skills and
Absolutely.
do the work, do the research, and share it. Please, I love it.
Yeah.
But those are sets of skills that people need. And I love that we've got people like yourself who are counselors, psychotherapists coming into this space who have done the work, the healing work to hold that mental healing space. Like that is so important. And to come in as a practitioner as well and bring those skills into this space, we need that
Mm.
alongside my like magical practice. I'm like put myself on self-study courses for like trauma informed
Mm-hmm.
coaching and counseling things so that I can check those things, like what's the current somatic
Very much
psychotherapy
so.
things. I'm not getting qualifications in them, but I'm studying them because it all plays in. I've spent
Hmm.
most of my life studying how do you teach things, how do you communicate
Yeah.
the incommunicable. Like those are skills that need learning. And so we've got this wash into the world of people who are claiming these titles. Yes, good.
Yeah.
And then setting themselves up as experts who teach as well or who
Completely.
share. And I'm like, okay, you're just muddying the waters by sharing the things that you've overheard from other people. And okay, there's
Mm-hmm.
space for that as well. And to a degree, actually, what that does is it provides a safe layer of fog for the people who are doing the serious work to
Mm.
continue doing the serious work. And those people may or may not step into that space, may over time develop those skills, maybe developing those skills by doing that. We've got some wonderful people who have come up and who feel like they are, who have, I know a couple of people who feel like they're fraudulent because they've come up through social media, like they're Insta witches or TikTok witches or whatever, and they feel fraudulent
Mm-hmm.
because they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I haven't been doing, but they
They
have been
totally
doing the
have.
work.
No, absolutely they have. Yeah.
And that's the thing, it's a practice. Anyway, I this is something that I get quite, I'm like, yes, open the doors, come on in, join us, and be aware of where your skills are and where your limits are. Share from that place and learn, be open to learning from those other spaces. It's why within Star
Mm.
Club, the ceremonial thing, we have a graduate program that's working where we're actually having student teachers come along,
Mm.
which is a model I've nicked off of Reclaiming, where they can be mentored in the teaching skills, in the teaching process, in the back end of things if they want to teach these things. Anyway, very excited about that.
Very, very. I think that's very necessary. This is one of the issues I think that we don't, as a community of communities, don't tend to speak too much about because there's always going to be those people who will say, well, don't gatekeep me, don't gatekeep me, don't gatekeep me. And what they're actually saying is, how dare you
Yeah.
suggest that I should be responsible? How dare you suggest that there should be ethics around this? How dare you criticize me? And they take it very personally. I think that, as somebody who has been stepping into teaching after 20 years, I've been in the pagan community for like 21 years, right? Yes, online, but still, I've been part of the community
Yeah,
and
part of
only
it, absolutely.
recently started to speak, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
facilitation skills is really necessary. We talked about TikTok, and there was something that I think really emphasizes this idea of the need for ethics. A couple of months ago, I don't know if you saw, but there was a TikTok grimoire placed out.
Yes,
You
I
saw
saw
it,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it came out that a vast majority of the influencers who had been invited to share that, who had been to contribute, blatantly plagiarized from other people, not even thinking that that was inappropriate. And the individual who had organized it just, eventually apologized, but there was a lot of questions about her apology. And really, I suspect that there's going to be legal stuff coming out of that because a lot of the publishers are not interested in the fact that you're an influencer. They will come down hard on you. That's not gatekeeping, that's responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And what are the avenues? Traditionally, we, like many of these traditional paths, have had organizations, colleges, spaces where that was going to be
Yes.
raised up. And
Where you
because we're
learn
in
those
that state.
skills.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a
Yeah.
very long process. But it's a weird kind of, I feel like people are starting to get it. At least maybe that's just the people I'm surrounded with. Maybe,
Hmm.
and that's kind of where I'm like hesitant to even generalize.
Hmm.
But it's an
Yeah.
interesting thing. Hmm.
Well, it's that, and there is that question of where do the young people coming up now, or the new people coming in, where are they going to find the skills
Mm-hmm.
that they need in order to hold magical space for a group? If they want to run a circle, if they are leading it as a leader, great. So where do you learn those skills to hold that space energetically, safely? Where one of the things that was a huge shock to me when I started running circles as part of my pagan society, as part of my university, was that after the ritual, people would come to me with whatever had come up in the ritual for them, whatever emotional stuff they were dealing with, and it would come up because it does. You open
Yes,
doors, the emotions come out,
totally.
the issues people have, and some people had some serious, like serious, genuine mental health issues, and I'm like, I'm not equipped to deal with this. So I went away and researched, like, okay, what are some of the ways of managing this? How do you manage holding a space where it brings up less for the vulnerable people? How do you
Mm-hmm.
support those? How do you support yourself as someone facilitating that so that you're not taking on everyone else's crap? Because that's not good for you. It's not good for them.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you refer people to? So within
Yeah.
the Crimson Coven, I've got a list of people. I'm like, okay, if you need to reach out to someone about an issue around a related topic, here is a list of people that
Mm-hmm.
you can reach out to who are professionals who you can go and see. Here, because we need that process.
We
Um,
do.
and
Yeah.
and as you say, historically, you'd come up through an order or a coven or a group or a whatever training process. And okay, maybe the first people that set it up had worked it out themselves. But in the best ones, the ones that lasted, that would go, um, they would have then worked out those various systems, the various steps and things like that. So there'd be a system in place for training people, for
Mm.
supporting people within reclaiming, which is a non-hierarchical anarchistic tradition.
Mm-hmm.
There are systems in place to support new teachers,
Yeah.
support people who want to step into ritual facilitation roles, to support that, the growing of your skills and learning from each other. And this is the thing, like, we've got this whole thing, you are your own spiritual authority. Everyone can be a witch. Yes, you can. Everyone can be a priest or priestess or a ritualist. Yes, you can. And you can, that doesn't mean that you are
Mm.
yet.
Mm-hmm.
Learn those skills, find the people to learn those skills from. Where are young people going to do that? Where are new people, sorry, not necessarily young people, but new people
Mm.
coming in? And particularly when the way to get big seems to be to become an influencer on social media, which prioritizes making it, and it genuinely does, it prioritizes making pretty sound bites.
Yeah.
And sometimes those can be really valuable. And some of the best people that I know who are skilled and genuinely know their stuff and who are good at that, they make like 7 pretty sound bites and then one serious video. And then another 7 pretty sound bites and one serious
And
video.
one
And the
series
pretty
video,
sound bites
exactly.
get them in the door. And then the serious
Yeah.
video gets half as many views. But at least it's getting some of that support, some of that information out
Exactly.
there.
Exactly.
I don't have the patience to be doing that. So I'm just my
Mm.
messy self
Yeah.
online. I'm like, this is me. Here, I've made some graphics. This is the course I'm running next.
Right.
Oh, look, I saw some butterflies this weekend. Have a picture of butterflies. Like
Well,
I
it
did
is
today's.
exhausting, though. Let's be honest here. I mean, it is exhausting. But I cut you off. Today was.
Oh, today's post was a little video that I took when my friend took me to the butterfly house and we painted butterflies
Love
and they
it.
had coral in there under UV lights. So I took a video of it and I set it to the sound of sea and I'm like, that'll just be nice for people to just
Mm-hmm.
look at, because I find it nice. It was a happy memory for me. So I was
Yeah.
like, I will share this as a happy memory. I liked it. So today's video, yeah, not like sea witches do this. It's like, here, have some pretty coral for my mermaid friends. You know?
I love that. I love that. I think that really ties into what we were saying before about that place of coming back to self, right? I've
Yeah.
noticed at least the influences that I respect. I'll frame it that way. The influences that I respect. I have and I have to as a professional therapist. I have to have a good bullshit detector.
Mm.
I can detect when somebody is sharing their life out of joy and just wanting to share their practice. Our friend Mara, our friend Bretta Moss, our
Yes.
friend Christopher, a lot of our mutual friends share their lives, and it's for people to view. And this is a part of my practice, a part of their practice, versus those who are so wanting attention. And these are the dangerous people who they definitely need to develop those facilitation skills and develop that sense of responsibility, because those are the ones who, when somebody comes up after a ritual and says, "This came up for me, oh, I can help you, please tell me more," and then suddenly becomes all about them.
Yeah.
I'm what do you do about that? But I mean, there's all sorts of things that can be said
Yeah.
about that, right? Yeah.
So, and here's the thing, okay, and this is me doing my typical ADHD thing of I've had an idea. I've been trying to work out like what is the support structure? Like how can we actually help people who want those skills? Um, you know, but they've got no route for doing that. All right, well, maybe one of the things that we do is that the people who are experienced in various different aspects of it, we get together and we have have a resource and have a set of resources. So I was just sort of putting it out there that if anyone might be interested or knows of a resource already that has
Mm-hmm.
stuff about, and the problem is it's not sexy. Like
Yeah.
facilitation skills and pastoral care, it doesn't sound sexy, but you can dress it up.
It's
Um,
90s down at the Freeway Motel where the self development course is happening, right? With the shoulder pads.
yeah, right, right. And the, oh, yeah. Oh dear. And the
Sorry.
you know the theme. Oh no, you have sent me off on a thing. Like there's the theme tune that you walk into, going, yeah, everybody go, yeah, whatever. Everybody say woo! I'm so great. But yeah, so if there are people out there that know of of a set of resources, that would be really great to hear. But if there's people out there who are interested in starting to put this together at some point in the future, maybe next year sometime, then reach out to me. I'd love to actually start facilitating this happening. One of my dreams for the Enchanted Academy, is that at some point in the future it will become a space where I can host other teachers teaching their classes, and where we can have resources for people who want to teach. And one of the reasons for that is because I know so many people who are brilliant teachers or facilitators, um, who just don't have the online technical skills to work out the setup to get like people booked on and what have you. For me, that's really simple. My day job, as it were, part of my job that I really quite enjoy is admin work for spiritual businesses. Um, so I do admin work for spiritual businesses. So I do things like the answering the emails and the setting up of the automated posts and the what have you. I can do like marketing stuff for other people. I just can't do it for myself, but setting up the technical like back end of things, and working out the systems to kind of get those pieces in place. So like that's easy for me, and I get quite excited about it because once you've done it, you kind of see this amazing thing that you've made, and that can then help people. So having that space, this is, as I say, one of my dreams for tea. And I call it tea because tea is magic.
Yeah,
You like literally stir
that's
herbs
true.
and brew up a potion. um, Ceridwen's Cauldron, coming full circle, is to have it be a space that can hold other people and support other people in sharing their gifts and in finding those skills. So just throwing it out there, if anyone's listening, if you're interested, in that sort of thing, um, that
I
setting up
will
that kind of resource, that'd be great.
absolutely. I'll place the details to all of your websites and whatnot down below. I
Thank
realize we've actually gone way over time, which isn't a bad thing. I think we can probably talk more and more and more.
Yeah,
But for the interest of our dear listeners, I feel like that's a good place to end. But here's a plug. This is coming out the first week of December-ish. What stuff do you have available over December that people can access?
So I've set up my Patreon to be to kind of hold everything, and you can join at obviously at different tiers. The top tier is £25 a month, and that includes any live workshops that I'm running online, and a community call, which will include an oracle reading or tarot reading of some description, a particular theme, and Q&A discussion to build community, a meditation, like an audio meditation, and extracts of my books. So the next book that I'm working on, the contract is due in sort of the end of this year. So the extracts will start showing up on Patreon soon, is on ritual skills, and specifically on using bardic skills, so storytelling skills, so developing those and then using those in ritual to make your ritual and your magic more powerful.
Fantastic.
So
I love
yes,
it.
because I
I
saw
love that.
I've seen so many rubbish rituals, like, and I'm like, yeah, let's offer a resource for people to build those skills if they want to, and you know, I'm learning more obviously as I research it and apply things. So you know, and the workshop on in December is on the 6th of December, and it's going to be on the fires of celebration. So that's sort of wrapping up some fire magic. So we'll be diving into some fire magic, but it's in that Crimson Craft thing. So the embodiment and tuning into the embodiment of the fires within to find that delight that's going to guide you forwards into the next year. So
Wonderful.
yeah, that's the main thing in December.
Oh, wonderful. That's excellent. I will make sure that all of the links are down below. People can go and access your website and your social media.
Absolutely.
This has been delightful. I'm really, really pleased. And I'm really looking forward to actually meeting you in person. We can figure out how high our heights, you know.
Yes, because you only ever see each other through a screen. I'm like, do you? Yeah.
It's
How
too
tall are
funny.
you? Am I going to look up or down? Yeah.
It will also give me a chance to actually come out to Aberystwyth because last time I was out there was like when I was a little tiny kid. So I'm looking forward to coming and seeing that place again.
Yeah.
Halo, thank you so much. Go on.
Sorry, I just got excited. Well, if you haven't been here since you were a little kid, you must go up to Borthon Innislas, which is just down the road from Aberystwyth, um, where the water has washed away some of the top layer of the
The
beach and
logs.
revealed Cantragwaelod, the petrified forest. It's amazing. As I tell everyone, but like for the listeners, like look it up.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
stunning. Yeah, low
yeah.
tide. You've just anyway, the re-emerged sunken forest of myth and legend.
I
But
love
yes,
it. I
anyway,
love it.
I
I
look
love
forward
it.
to seeing you.
I look forward to seeing you too. I do. It's I've seen pictures of that. I'm more used to the Cantor Helig, the
Mm,
area around Llandudno, where allegedly there was also a sunken place. Wales is just a place of sunken places, isn't it?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
the where the sea and the land meet, and
Mm.
so Wales is just this liminal space of
Hmm.
magic. The land,
I
sea,
just
and
love it.
sky.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to getting you back. But in the meantime, Halo, thank you so much for coming on. For those listeners who are listening to this at the time of recording, or at least the time of premiere, go and check out Halo's offerings, and join us next week as we go all the way down to Australia. Actually, we're going to go and speak to Lee Morgan, who is also a Moonbooks author, and I suspect there will be some parallels with that conversation, very similar sort of path that you've both been on. So I've been Ben Stimson, this has been Halo, and I will speak to you all later. See you later. Bye bye.